grave whisper.
My name is Daniel Mercer, and I never believed in ghosts. I believed in drafts, in aging wood, in the way Manhattan hums even after midnight. I believed in history, documented, cataloged, archived, but not in spirits. That changed the night I locked myself inside the Morris-Jumel Mansion. If you've never seen it in person, you might imagine some crooked Victorian nightmare wedged between skyscrapers. It's not. It stands dignified and symmetrical, a pale wooden relic rising from a hill in Washington Heights, watching the city grow around it like a patient ancestor. Built in 1765, older than the United States itself. They say George Washington used it as a headquarters during the Revolutionary War. They say Eliza Jumel walked its halls in silk gowns long after her husband's suspicious death. They say she still does. I went there to prove that "they say" means nothing. I run a small YouTube channel, historical investigations, late-night tours, atmospheric storytelling. American audiences love history with a pulse. My subscribers had been requesting this house for months. Spend the night, try a spirit box, see if Eliza shows up. I contacted the Historical Society, pulled permits, signed waivers. Officially, I was documenting architectural preservation techniques after hours. Unofficially, I planned to spend one entire night alone inside Manhattan's oldest house. October wind swept through the trees the evening I arrived. The city below was alive. Sirens, subway rumbles, distant bass from car stereos. But up on that hill, everything felt separated, elevated. The caretaker, an older man named Harold, let me in just before dusk. "You're sure you want to be alone?" he asked, keys jingling in his palm. "That's the idea," I smiled. He didn't smile back. "People don't like staying past closing." "I'll be fine." He hesitated, then handed me the keys. "Alarm's off. I'll be back at 7 a.m. Try not to move anything." The door shut behind him with a heavy, final thud. Silence followed. Not true silence. No building in New York is ever silent, but a muffled stillness, the kind that feels layered, old. I set up my cameras in the main parlor first. Polished floors, antique furniture roped off with velvet cords, portraits lining the walls, faces from another century staring outward as if mildly annoyed by modern intrusion. The air smelled like aged wood and something faintly sweet, old perfume maybe. I did my intro for the channel, keeping my voice low but steady. Tonight, I'm inside the Morris-Jumel Mansion, alone. This house has stood through the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, and the entire rise of New York City. But many believe something else has endured here, something that never left. I paused, letting the camera roll. Behind me, a faint creak echoed from the upper staircase. I turned quickly. Nothing. Old houses shift, that's all. I continued setting up infrared lights in the dining room. Every step across the floorboards produced a whisper of sound, the kind of whisper that feels like it's answering you. By 9 p.m., darkness fully wrapped around the mansion. The tall windows reflected only my own movements now. No city lights reached this high without distortion. I began the first walkthrough. Time is 9:14 p.m. I'm heading upstairs. The staircase curved gently, polished banisters smooth beneath my hand. Halfway up, I felt it, a sudden drop in temperature. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just noticeable. I exhaled, my breath fogged faintly. That wasn't possible. The heating system had been off all evening. I glanced toward the hallway at the top of the stairs. A door at the far end stood slightly open. I was certain it had been closed earlier. "Okay," I whispered into the camera. "That's new." I walked slowly toward it, each footstep deliberate. The walls seemed to amplify my breathing. As I reached the door, it moved. Not wide, not violently, just a soft, deliberate inch forward, as if someone inside had pulled it. My pulse thudded in my ears. "Hello?" I called out, keeping my tone calm for the audience I knew would later dissect every frame. No answer. I pushed the door open. The bedroom beyond was empty. Moonlight filtered through sheer curtains. A 4-poster bed stood untouched, rope barrier intact. But the air inside felt occupied, not crowded, just observed. I stepped fully into the room, and behind me, the door shut, not slammed, closed, cleanly. I froze. The handle clicked softly into place. I hadn't touched it. For several seconds, I couldn't move. My rational mind scrambled for explanations: warped hinges, airflow pressure, uneven flooring. But the windows were sealed, and the air was completely still. I turned slowly toward the door. The brass knob began to turn from the outside, and that's when I realized I wasn't alone in Manhattan's oldest house. Not even close.
The brass knob stopped turning. Not slowly, not cautiously. It stopped the way a hand stops when it realizes it's been noticed. I stood in that bedroom for a full 10 seconds, camera still rolling, breath shallow in my chest. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It felt crowded, like someone had stepped back from the door and was now listening. "Okay," I whispered. "That just happened." I forced myself to move. If this was going to be a real investigation, I couldn't freeze every time the house shifted. I crossed the room and gripped the knob. It was cold. Not room temperature cold, metal left in snow cold. I pulled the door open quickly. The hallway outside was empty, long, narrow, dim. The staircase at the far end descended into darkness. Portraits along the walls seemed different now, their eyes sharper, their expressions almost curious. "Hello?" I called again, louder this time. Nothing answered, but something moved. A faint creak sounded above me. I frowned. "There isn't a third floor open to the public," I muttered into the camera, "just attic space." Another creak, directly overhead. It wasn't settling wood, it had rhythm. Step, pause, step, slow, measured, heavy enough to belong to something solid. I swallowed. Time is 9:32 p.m. I'm hearing footsteps above the second floor. The ceiling groaned again, this time closer to the hallway's center, as if whatever was walking up there had shifted its weight. I walked toward the staircase, forcing my legs to obey. The banister felt colder than before. As I descended to the main floor, the air thickened, heavier, charged. The main parlor lay quiet in infrared glow, but the sound continued. Above me now, right above the ceiling of the room that once served as headquarters to George Washington during the Battle of Harlem Heights. I didn't believe in residual energy, didn't believe history could imprint itself into wood and plaster. Yet, standing there, beneath those footsteps, I felt something I'd never felt before. Pressure, like being watched from a higher vantage point. The footsteps stopped, directly over my head. I tilted the camera upward. "Is someone up there?" I called out. The response came instantly. 3 firm knocks from the ceiling. Not random cracking wood, not distant city noise. 3 deliberate strikes. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in the microphone. "Okay," I said, voice tightening. "Can you do it again?" Silence. 10 seconds passed. Then, knock. A single sharp hit.
I stumbled backward involuntarily. That's not possible. The attic door was at the far end of the first-floor hallway, secured and locked. I had checked it when setting up equipment. No one had access tonight but me. Trying to ground myself, I walked toward the hallway. The knocks didn't follow, but something else did. Footsteps, not above, behind me. Soft, quick, like fabric brushing against wood. I spun around. Empty parlor, but one of the velvet ropes around the antique desk swayed gently. I hadn't gone near it. The temperature dropped again. My breath fogged stronger now. I aimed the camera toward the rope. Did you move that? The rope continued its slow pendulum motion, then stopped mid-swing. Not gradually, instantly, as if grabbed. The footsteps above resumed, this time faster, pacing back and forth, directly above Washington's old war room. A new thought crept into my mind, one I hadn't considered before. What if it wasn't residual? What if it was aware? The pacing grew heavier, agitated. Then, suddenly, a loud crash from the dining room, wood striking wood. I rushed toward it, adrenaline overriding fear. One of the dining chairs lay on its side in the middle of the floor. I had not touched that room since setting up the infrared light. The rest of the chairs remained perfectly aligned beneath the table. The fallen chair pointed toward the hallway, toward me. No, I whispered, no way. The attic footsteps stopped again. Total silence. Then a new sound emerged, not from above, from the stairwell. A soft dragging noise, slow, ascending. I walked cautiously toward the base of the stairs. The dragging continued. Step, drag, step, drag, like something climbing but not quite upright. My chest tightened. "This isn't funny," I called out, though no one else was there. The dragging reached the midpoint of the staircase and stopped. I could see the upper landing clearly from where I stood. Nothing visible, no shadow, no shape, just darkness hugging the curve of the railing. The silence stretched unbearably long. Then, a whisper, so faint I almost missed it, but the microphone didn't. It came from the stairwell, a woman's voice, soft, refined, close to my ear despite the distance. "Daniel." I froze. I never said my name on camera tonight, not once. The whisper repeated, clearer now. "Daniel, you shouldn't be here." The temperature plunged. The dragging sound resumed, but this time it wasn't climbing. It was descending, and whatever was making it was coming down the stairs.
The dragging sound continued down the staircase. Step, drag, step, drag. I couldn't move. Every instinct screamed at me to run, out the door, down the hill, back into the safety of Manhattan's living, breathing noise. But my legs refused. It felt like the air itself had thickened, pressing against my chest. The whisper echoed again. "Daniel." Closer this time. The microphone clipped slightly as my breath caught in my throat. I slowly raised the camera toward the staircase. Nothing visible, but the sound was unmistakable. Something was descending, uneven, deliberate, like a long skirt brushing over wooden steps. Step, drag, step, drag. The sound reached the final stair, then stopped. Silence swallowed the house whole. I stared at the empty staircase. "Okay," I whispered hoarsely. "If someone is here with me, I need you to show yourself." The house answered. A cold gust swept through the hallway, though no windows were open. The chandelier in the parlor trembled lightly. Shadows shifted along the walls, and then I saw her. At first, it was only movement, a distortion in the air near the base of the stairs, like heat rising from pavement in summer. But the distortion thickened, condensed, shaped itself. A woman stood there, translucent, pale, dressed in what looked like a late 18th century gown, high waist, flowing fabric, lace at the collar. Her hair was pinned high, dark and severe. She wasn't glowing, she wasn't dramatic. She looked solid, but not alive. I knew immediately who she resembled. Morris-Jumel, the former mistress of this house, socialite, businesswoman, a woman rumored to be manipulative, ambitious, and possibly involved in her husband's mysterious death. The apparition tilted her head slightly. Her eyes locked onto mine. They weren't empty. They were aware. "You shouldn't be here," she said again, though her lips barely moved. My hands trembled so violently I nearly dropped the camera. "This is a public museum," I managed to say. "I have permission." A faint smile touched her face. "Permission," she repeated, as though the word amused her. Behind her, the hallway darkened. The hand tore further through the plaster. Chunks of ceiling crashed to the floor around me, dust exploding into the air in thick gray clouds. I stumbled backward, coughing, camera shaking violently in my grip. The fingers were long, too long. The skin was gray and tight, stretched over sharp knuckles like aged parchment. The nails were dark, not dirty, but stained, almost as if soaked in ink or blood. The hand clawed downward, widening the hole. The cracking sound echoed through the parlor like gunfire. I couldn't breathe. "This is not happening," I muttered, though the microphone caught every tremor in my voice. Another hand punched through beside the first. Now 2 arms dangled from the broken ceiling, straining as something above forced its weight downward. The attic beams groaned in protest. I backed into the antique desk behind me, nearly knocking over the velvet rope. "Okay," I said to no one, to my audience, to the house, to myself. "Okay, I'm leaving." I turned toward the front door. It stood at the far end of the hallway, 20 feet. That was all. I ran. Halfway there, the house shifted. Not subtly, the entire floor tilted beneath me as if the foundation itself had exhaled. I slammed into the wall, shoulder first, pain exploding down my arm. Behind me, a body dropped from the ceiling. The impact shook the mansion. I turned slowly. It stood between me and the parlor. Tall, unnaturally tall. Its head nearly brushed the chandelier. Its limbs bent at strange angles, joints protruding sharply beneath that gray skin. Its torso was thin, ribs visible, stretching the skin like a drum. Its face, I wish I could say it didn't have one, but it did. Sunken eyes, hollow and black, and a mouth that seemed carved too wide across its face, lips thin and cracked. It didn't blink, it didn't breathe, it only stared. The dragging sound I'd heard on the staircase began again, but now I understood. It wasn't fabric, it was bone scraping wood. The creature took one step forward, its foot twisted unnaturally as it moved. Drag. Another step. Drag. My back hit the wall. "There's no one else here," I whispered, voice breaking. "This isn't funny. If someone's messing with me..." The creature tilted its head sharply to the side. A loud pop echoed as its neck shifted. Then it spoke. Not in a whisper, not gently, but in layered voices. Male, female, old, young. "You asked." The sound vibrated through the walls. "You knocked."
the voices continued. You listened. Its jaw stretched wider, far wider than human anatomy allows. The chandelier flickered wildly above us. You opened the house. The temperature plummeted again, colder than before. Frost spread visibly across the wooden floorboards, racing toward me like white veins. I'm leaving, I said again, pushing myself off the wall. The creature lunged, faster than anything that size should move. I dove sideways just as its arm slammed into the wall where my head had been. The impact cracked the plaster and splintered wood. I scrambled to my feet and ran for the front door. The handle wouldn't budge. I twisted harder. Locked. I unlocked this, I shouted. Behind me, the dragging resumed. Closer, slow, confident. I turned, heart pounding. The creature was only 10 feet away now. Its limbs jerked erratically as it moved. Each step produced that sickening scrape across the floor. Daniel! The voice came from the staircase again, soft, refined. I glanced up. At the top landing stood the apparition of Morris-Jumel once more, but she wasn't alone. Figures lined the hallway behind her, shadowed shapes in colonial attire, their faces blurred, indistinct, watching. You fed it, she said calmly. I didn't know, I shouted back. The creature's head snapped toward her. It let out a sound, not a scream, not a growl, but something like tearing fabric stretched through speakers. The portraits along the walls began falling one by one, frames shattering against the hardwood floor. You stirred what sleeps beneath, Eliza continued. This house was never empty. The creature lunged again. This time it caught my jacket, claws digging into the fabric. I felt the pressure through the cloth, sharp, crushing. I swung the camera instinctively, smashing it against its arm. The screen shattered, but the impact made it recoil slightly, enough for me to break free. I bolted down the hallway toward the dining room, lungs burning. Behind me, the dragon turned into full chaotic pursuit. The dining room door slammed shut just as I reached it. I threw my weight against it. It wouldn't open. The walls around me began to tremble. Above, the attic footsteps returned, dozens now, running in every direction. The house wasn't just haunted, it was awake. The chandelier in the dining room burst, plunging me into near total darkness except for faint moonlight through the windows. I pressed myself against the door, shaking. On the other side, silence. Then a slow scrape, right across the wood, from top to bottom, as if something was carving its way through, and then, inches from my face, the wood began to split.
The crack in the dining room door widened. Wood splintered inward, thin fractures spreading like spiderweb veins across the surface. I stumbled back, heart hammering so violently I thought I might black out. A long, gray finger pierced through the split, then another. They curled, testing the air. I scanned the room desperately. One window overlooked the dark lawn beyond the hill. If I could break it. The finger hooked deeper into the door and pulled. The wood tore downward with a shriek. A jagged opening revealed one hollow black eye staring through at me. You invited us, the layered voices whispered. The sound wasn't just outside the door anymore. It vibrated inside my skull. I revoke it, I shouted, not caring how insane I sounded. You are not welcome. For one split second, everything stopped. The scraping ceased. The footsteps overhead halted mid-run. Even the air felt suspended. Then the house exhaled. Not metaphorically, physically. The walls around me bowed outward and then inward with a deep groan, like lungs filling and collapsing. The floorboards beneath my feet flexed subtly. The mansion was breathing. The crack in the door sealed halfway, wood bending unnaturally as if attempting to repair itself. The gray fingers withdrew. I didn't wait. I ran to the window.
The latch stuck at first, but I forced it open with trembling hands. Cold October air rushed inside. Freedom! I climbed onto the sill. Below was a steep drop to the lawn, not fatal, but enough to break something if I landed wrong. Behind me, a wet sound, slow, stretching. I turned. The dining room walls were moving. The wallpaper rippled like disturbed water. Beneath it, shapes pressed outward, dozens of handprints bulging against the thin paper barrier. They pushed harder, fingers poked through, then wrists, then faces, distorted human faces, mouths open in silent screams, eyes wide and pleading. Not the gray creature, these were different. Colonial soldiers, servants, women in gowns, men in powdered wigs.
Their forms were half fused into the wall, like bodies trapped beneath ice. The wallpaper tore. They leaned outward, torsos straining free, arms reaching toward me. "Stay," they whispered in overlapping tones. "Stay with us." The window behind me slammed shut on its own, nearly crushing my hand. The latch snapped closed. "No," I breathed. The temperature rose suddenly, no longer freezing, oppressively warm now, thick, suffocating. The front door downstairs banged violently, once, twice, then silence. A new voice filled the room, soft, composed, cultured. Enough. The trapped figures froze mid-reach. The gray creature outside the dining room door shrieked in layered fury. The wallpaper smoothed slowly, swallowing the half-emerged bodies back into the wall like liquid cement. I turned toward the doorway. Standing in the hallway beyond the fractured door was the apparition of Morris-Jumel again. But this time, she appeared clearer, stronger. The air around her shimmered faintly. "You have awakened what feeds on fear," she said calmly, "and it grows stronger the more you resist." "I didn't mean to," I said, voice shaking. "I just wanted to document the history." She studied me. "For you, it is history," she replied. "For us, it is unfinished." A loud crack echoed from the ceiling. The gray creature's arm burst through the upper wall this time, claws gouging deep into the plaster as it forced its way into the dining room from above. Its body twisted unnaturally as it descended. "You cannot leave," it hissed. Eliza turned toward it, and for the first time, her composure faltered. "It does not belong to this house," she whispered. The creature lunged toward me again. Eliza stepped forward, her translucent form colliding with it. The impact wasn't physical, it was like two currents of air crashing together. The chandelier fragments on the floor lifted briefly into the air. The creature screamed, a sound so piercing it made my ears ring. "Run," Eliza commanded. I didn't hesitate. I bolted from the dining room into the hallway. The mansion shook violently behind me as unseen forces collided. Portraits fell, glass shattered. The front door swung open suddenly with a deafening slam. Cold night air flooded the foyer. Freedom again. I sprinted toward it, but just as I reached the threshold, the hill outside the mansion was gone. Beyond the doorway wasn't Manhattan. It wasn't Washington Heights. It wasn't even the lawn. It was darkness, endless, deep, a void stretching beyond sight. The mansion had cut itself off from the world. The door slammed shut inches from my face. The lock clicked into place. Behind me, silence. No battle sounds, no footsteps. I turned slowly. The hallway lights flickered back on, steady and calm. The walls looked pristine. No cracks, no damage, no broken ceiling. It was as if nothing had happened, except for one thing.
At the top of the staircase stood the gray creature, unharmed, unchallenged, and smiling.
Their forms were half fused into the wall, like bodies trapped beneath ice. The wallpaper tore. They leaned outward, torsos straining free, arms reaching toward me. "Stay," they whispered in overlapping tones. "Stay with us." The window behind me slammed shut on its own, nearly crushing my hand. The latch snapped closed. "No," I breathed. The temperature rose suddenly, no longer freezing, oppressively warm now, thick, suffocating. The front door downstairs banged violently, once, twice, then silence. A new voice filled the room, soft, composed, cultured. "Enough!" The trapped figures froze mid-reach. The gray creature outside the dining room door shrieked in layered fury. The wallpaper smoothed slowly, swallowing the half-emerged bodies back into the wall like liquid cement. I turned toward the doorway. Standing in the hallway beyond the fractured door was the apparition of Morris-Jumel again. But this time, she appeared clearer, stronger. The air around her shimmered faintly. "You have awakened what feeds on fear," she said calmly, "and it grows stronger the more you resist." "I didn't mean to," I said, voice shaking. "I just wanted to document the history." She studied me. "For you, it is history," she replied. "For us, it is unfinished." A loud crack echoed from the ceiling. The gray creature's arm burst through the upper wall this time, claws gouging deep into the plaster as it forced its way into the dining room from above. Its body twisted unnaturally as it descended. "You cannot leave," it hissed. Eliza turned toward it, and for the first time, her composure faltered. "It does not belong to this house," she whispered. The creature lunged toward me again. Eliza stepped forward, her translucent form colliding with it. The impact wasn't physical. It was like two currents of air crashing together. The chandelier fragments on the floor lifted briefly into the air. The creature screamed, a sound so piercing it made my ears ring. "Run," Eliza commanded. I didn't hesitate. I bolted from the dining room into the hallway. The mansion shook violently behind me as unseen forces collided. Portraits fell, glass shattered. The front door swung open suddenly with a deafening slam. Cold night air flooded the foyer. Freedom again. I sprinted toward it, but just as I reached the threshold, the hill outside the doorway was gone. Beyond the doorway wasn't Manhattan. It wasn't Washington Heights. It wasn't even the lawn. It was darkness. Endless. Deep. A void stretching beyond sight. The mansion had cut itself off from the world. The door slammed shut inches from my face. The lock clicked into place. Behind me, silence. No battle sounds. No footsteps. I turned slowly. The hallway lights flickered back on, steady and calm. The walls looked pristine. No cracks, no damage, no broken ceiling. It was as if nothing had happened, except for one thing. At the top of the staircase stood the gray creature, unharmed, unchallenged, and smiling.
The creature stood at the top of the staircase, perfectly still now. No dragging, no twitching, just watching me. Its hollow eyes reflected the faint glow of the restored hallway lights, and that stretched mouth curved upward in something disturbingly close to satisfaction. The house was calm again, too calm, as if the violence from moments ago had been absorbed into its walls and digested. "You cannot leave," the layered voices said. But this time, the words didn't come from the creature's mouth. They came from everywhere. The banister, the floorboards, the ceiling beams, the very structure of the Morris-Jumel Mansion. I backed slowly toward the parlor, mind racing. "This isn't real," I muttered. "This is stress, oxygen deprivation, panic." The creature descended one step, but it didn't drag anymore. It walked upright, smooth, controlled, as if it had learned. "You stand in a place of command," the voices continued, "a place where decisions sealed thousands of fates." Images flashed across the walls, not projected, embedded. The wallpaper dissolved into scenes of soldiers moving through dense smoke, cannons firing, men collapsing into mud. I recognized the historical context immediately. This house had once served as temporary headquarters for George Washington during the Revolutionary War. But what I was seeing wasn't textbook history. It was intimate, close. A young soldier gasping for breath as blood filled his lungs, a drummer boy screaming for his mother, a general signing an order without looking up. The creature descended another step. "Strategy," it whispered, "sacrifice." Its eyes never left mine. "You wanted history," the house said. "Witness it." The parlor floor beneath me darkened. Wet footprints appeared one by one across the hardwood, trailing from the staircase to where I stood. Bare feet, small, a child's. They stopped inches from my shoes. Cold fingers brushed the back of my calf. I jerked away with a shout. No one visible, but the sensation lingered, a pressure imprinting into my skin. "You are not the first to ask," the voices murmured. The portraits along the wall began to change. Faces melted into others, unknown men, unknown women, visitors, caretakers, investigators. Each portrait frame now held a different expression, wide-eyed terror frozen permanently in oil paint. My stomach twisted. "These are people," I whispered. "Were," the house corrected. The creature reached the final stair. It stood only 10 feet away now. Its body seemed less skeletal, less distorted than before. Its proportions had normalized slightly, as if feeding had strengthened it. "What do you want?" I demanded, my voice cracking. The creature's mouth opened, but instead of layered voices, a single tone emerged, calm, authoritative, almost presidential. "Command." The word echoed like a gavel strike. Suddenly, I wasn't in the parlor anymore. The room shifted around me. Furniture rearranged itself violently, sliding across the floor without sound. The antique desk positioned itself before me. Maps spread across its surface. Quill and ink appeared in my hand. I tried to drop them. I couldn't. My fingers wouldn't respond. The creature stood across the desk from me now. Its form flickered. For a split second, its face resembled Washington's portraits, stern, composed. Then it shifted into something skeletal and hollow again. "You will decide," it said. The maps showed battle lines, troop movements, arrows indicating attacks that would cost hundreds of lives. "I'm not doing this," I said through clenched teeth. My hand moved on its own. The quill dipped in ink. Signed. The moment the ink touched paper, the house erupted in screams. Not from the walls this time, from outside, through the windows. Thousands of voices crying out in pain, fear, confusion. The sound was unbearable. "I didn't choose that," I shouted. "You did," the house replied calmly. The creature leaned forward. Its hollow eyes were inches from mine now. "Every visitor chooses," it whispered. "Curiosity, intrusion, command." The maps vanished. The desk disappeared. I was back in the parlor, but the screams continued, echoing faintly through the floorboards like distant artillery. The creature reached out slowly. Its gray fingers brushed my forehead. Instantly, images flooded my mind. The attic, not empty, never empty. Bodies layered beneath the beams, not physical corpses, memories, decisions, regrets. Every command ever given within these walls had manifested into something living, and I had just added to it. "You belong now," the voices said in unison. The front door rattled violently again, but this time it sounded different, not like something trying to get in, like something trying to get out. The creature's smile widened, and from the attic above came the thunder of dozens of synchronized footsteps, marching.
The marching overhead grew louder, not chaotic like before, organized, synchronized, boots striking wood in perfect rhythm, left, right, left, right. The ceiling trembled with each unified step, dust drifting down in fine gray clouds that glittered in the chandelier light. I stood frozen in the parlor of the Morris-Jumel Mansion, heart pounding so violently it drowned out my thoughts. "They're responding," the creature whispered. Its voice was no longer layered. It was singular now, steady, commanding. The house around us shifted subtly. The polished hardwood darkened again, but this time not with stains, with shadows shaped like marching men. Their outlines stretched along the floor, moving in rhythm with the unseen boots above. "You turned a key," it said softly. "You signed." "I didn't choose anything," I snapped, though my voice shook. "You forced my hand." The creature tilted its head slightly. "All leaders say that." The attic door at the end of the hallway creaked open on its own, slowly, deliberately. A cold wind funneled down the staircase, carrying with it the metallic scent of gunpowder and something older, sweat soaked into wool uniforms. The marching stopped. Silence fell so suddenly it rang in my ears. Then, one bootstep descended onto the attic stairs, heavy, solid. Another followed, and another. I backed toward the front door again, though I knew it wouldn't open. Figures began emerging down the staircase. Not the gray creature, not Eliza. These were soldiers, dozens of them. Colonial uniforms torn and stained, faces pale and gaunt. Some carried muskets, others clutched wounds that never healed. Their eyes were hollow, but not empty, focused on me. They didn't rush, they descended in formation, disciplined, as if awaiting orders. "You stand in headquarters," the creature said behind me. "This house does not forget command." The first soldier reached the final stair. He stepped onto the parlor floor, boots echoing sharply. Then another joined him, and another. They formed a line, facing me, awaiting instruction. My throat tightened. "I'm not your commander," I whispered. The creature moved closer to my side, almost companionable. "You signed," it repeated. The air thickened again. The antique desk reappeared before me, as it had moments earlier. The maps unfurled across its surface, but this time the ink lines were darker, more chaotic. Red arrows, encirclements, ambushes. Across the walls, battle scenes flickered. Smoke, cannon fire, men collapsing. In one frame, I saw a distant hill, the Battle of Harlem Heights, the very conflict connected to this mansion's past under George Washington. But the faces were wrong. They were modern. Tourists, investigators, urban explorers, people with cameras like mine. They fell the same way the soldiers had. The soldier at the front of the line raised his musket, not at me, at the door, as if awaiting the signal to fire. "What happens if I refuse?" I asked. The creature smiled faintly. "You already saw." The parlor lights flickered. Suddenly, I saw flashes of earlier visitors, a woman filming a documentary, a group of teenagers daring each other to stay overnight, a paranormal investigator laughing at the idea of ghosts, all of them standing where I stood, all of them eventually facing the desk, signing, commanding, and then becoming part of the walls. The wallpaper rippled faintly again, and I recognized some of their faces pressed beneath its surface, trapped between paint and plaster, conscious, watching. The soldier's musket clicked as he cocked it. The entire line followed suit in perfect synchronization. The sound was deafening, metal on metal, wood against shoulder. The creature leaned toward my ear. "Command them." My hands trembled violently. "If I do," I whispered, "what happens to me?" The answer came not from the creature, but from behind it. Eliza stood at the top of the staircase once more. Her form flickered faintly, weaker than before. "You bind yourself," she said softly, "as all before you have." Her gaze held something new now, not warning, regret. The soldiers held steady, awaiting. The desk's quill lifted into my hand again without my consent. The ink shimmered, the maps pulsed. "Command," the house demanded. The front door began rattling violently again, not from outside, from within, as if something trapped inside the wood itself wanted release. My pulse roared. I looked at the soldiers, at the creature, at Eliza, and then I made a decision. Instead of signing the battle plan, I slashed the map straight down the center with the quill. The paper tore violently. The soldiers froze. The creature's expression shifted from satisfaction to fury. The mansion screamed, not metaphorically, a high structural shriek as beams strained and glass shattered throughout the house. The soldiers' bodies began to distort, flickering between solid and shadow. "You dare!" the creature roared. The wallpaper burst open along every wall, faces screaming as they pushed outward again. The attic shook violently overhead, and the floor beneath my feet cracked, splitting wide open, revealing darkness below, depthless, hungry. I lost my balance and began to fall. I fell into darkness. Not a short drop, not a crash through wood and splinters. The floor opened beneath me like a mouth, and the parlor of the Morris-Jumel Mansion vanished above, as if swallowed by ink. There was no wind rushing past my ears, no impact waiting below, just descent, endless, weightless. The screams of the house faded into a low, distant hum, like the echo of artillery miles away. Then my feet touched solid ground, gently. I stood in darkness so complete it felt textured, thick, breathing. Slowly, a dim gray light seeped outward from nowhere and everywhere at once. The space around me formed. Not dirt, not stone. Wooden beams stretched overhead, ancient, rough-hewn supports holding up something massive. I was beneath the mansion, but not in a cellar. This was older than a basement, older than the house itself. Rows of figures stood in the gloom, perfectly still, facing forward. Colonial soldiers, civilians, modern visitors, each one frozen upright, eyes open, unblinking. Their skin wasn't gray like the creatures, it was drained, colorless, as if something had siphoned the life from them and left only form. Their chests did not rise, but I could feel their awareness, watching me, waiting. Footsteps echoed behind me, slow, measured. I turned. The gray creature emerged from the darkness, but it no longer appeared twisted or skeletal. It was taller now, more defined, its limbs proportionate, its posture commanding. It almost looked human. Almost. "You sought the foundation," it said calmly. "This is what you stand upon." I scanned the endless rows of trapped figures. "They're alive," I whispered. "They are sustained," it corrected. "By what?" It spread its long fingers outward. "By decision." The word reverberated through the beams above us. The wooden supports pulsed faintly, like veins carrying blood. This house was built for command, war, strategy, authority. Images flickered in the air around us. The mansion in 1776, officers gathered around a desk, tension thick in candlelight as George Washington weighed options that would cost lives. "Choice creates consequence," the creature said. "Consequence creates weight."
Weight must rest somewhere. My stomach dropped. "On them, on those who enter seeking power," it replied, "or spectacle." I felt shame burn in my chest. I had come for views, for content, for engagement metrics and audience retention. "You fed it," I whispered. The creature's hollow eyes flickered faintly. "I am not hunger," it said. It stepped closer. "I am structure." The beams overhead groaned softly, and I realized what I was seeing. The trapped figures weren't random victims. They were pillars, load-bearing. Every person who had signed, who had accepted command within these walls, became part of the foundation, supporting the house's continued existence. Without them, the mansion would collapse, not physically, but spiritually. Its history would lose its anchor, its weight would scatter. "You tore the map," the creature said quietly. "You refused command. Then why am I here?" It tilted its head. "Because refusal is still choice." The rows of trapped figures shifted subtly, their heads turning in perfect unison toward me. "You disrupted the balance," it continued. "Now the foundation trembles." Above us, a deep cracking sound echoed. The beams shook violently. Dust rained down. In the distance, I heard the muffled screams of the parlor, the house unraveling. "You want me to replace one of them," I said. "Yes." The answer was immediate. "If I refuse again?" The creature paused. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across its face. "Then the house falls. And they go free?" Its silence was answer enough. The trapped figures began to murmur faintly. Not words, just sound, low, hopeful. The beams overhead cracked again, louder this time. Splinters rained down around us. The foundation trembled violently. The creature stepped closer, urgency creeping into its voice. "Without command, there is chaos. Without choice," I countered, "there's prison." The gray light dimmed further. The rows of trapped visitors began to flicker like failing bulbs. The mansion above groaned in agony. If it collapsed, what would happen to the history inside it, to the energy, to the thing before me? "You must decide," the creature said. "Command or collapse." I looked at the endless rows of faces, then back at the creature, and I realized something. This thing wasn't evil, it was necessary, but necessity doesn't equal justice. The beams split wide open above us. A blinding crack of light tore through the darkness. The foundation was giving way. The creature extended its hand toward me. "Choose," it demanded. The trapped figures leaned forward slightly, waiting. The house above screamed one final time, and the foundation began to crumble. The foundation split open above us. Wooden beams cracked like rifle fire, splinters raining down as blinding light poured through widening fractures. The rows of trapped figures flickered violently, their forms destabilizing like static-filled broadcasts.
The Morris-Jumel Mansion was tearing itself apart. "Choose," the creature demanded again, its voice no longer calm. The singular authority it had held moments ago fractured into layered distortion. "Without structure, everything dissolves." I stared at the endless lines of preserved visitors, soldiers, civilians, modern thrill seekers, all reduced to support beams for history's weight. "You call this structure?" I said hoarsely. "I call it sacrifice." The beams above us snapped one by one, the sound echoing like distant artillery. For a split second, the air shimmered, and I saw the parlor overhead, chandeliers swinging, portraits crashing to the floor, wallpaper tearing itself apart as the faces trapped within screamed soundlessly. The mansion wasn't just haunted, it was sustained by those it consumed. "If the house falls," I asked, "what happens to you?" The creature didn't hesitate. "I end." The admission hung in the trembling air. "And them?" "They return to consequence." That wasn't an answer. I stepped backward as the ground beneath us cracked open in jagged lines. "You're afraid," I realized. The creature's eyes darkened. "I am continuity." "No," I said, "you're dependence." The rows of figures began to sway, their outlines growing faint. Among them, I recognized faces from the walls upstairs, tourists, investigators, people who had come searching for mystery and found permanence instead. Above us, another beam snapped. The foundation lurched violently. "You misunderstand," the creature growled. "History requires anchor. Without weight, it drifts into myth." "And with weight," I shot back, "it buries people alive." The light from above intensified, turning the darkness silver. The trapped figures began stepping forward, not physically, but in presence. Their awareness surged. Hope, fear, desperation. The creature extended its hand again, but this time not commanding, pleading. "Take command. Stabilize the house. Replace what you broke." I looked at its hand, then at the beams overhead, then at the endless rows of human pillars. I finally understood something fundamental.
This house had been headquarters once, a place where decisions were made without seeing the cost firsthand, where ink on parchment translated to blood on soil. That energy had never dissipated. It had calcified, and it needed someone willing to carry the burden. But burden without consent is imprisonment. "I won't replace them," I said firmly. The creature's expression twisted. "Then you condemn them all." "No," I whispered. "I release them." The final central beam above us shattered. A thunderous crack split the space in two. Light exploded downward like a collapsing star. The rows of trapped figures screamed, not in pain, but in shock, as their forms fractured into shards of gray mist. The creature roared, lunging toward me as if to force its will upon mine. But I didn't reach for command. I reached upward, into the collapsing light, and I let go. The foundation gave way entirely. The beams dissolved. The ground beneath us vanished. The creature's body fractured mid-lunge, splintering into elongated fragments of shadow. "You will erase it," it howled. "No," I said calmly as the light engulfed everything. "I'll let it breathe." The darkness shattered. The screams stopped. The marching ended. And I felt myself rising, not falling, rising through layers of sound and memory and dust, until I slammed back onto solid wood, hard. Air rushed violently into my lungs. I coughed and rolled onto my side. The parlor ceiling was intact. The chandelier hung steady. The portraits rested in place. No cracks, no shattered glass, no broken beams. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows, soft, normal, peaceful. I lay there shaking, heart racing, waiting for footsteps, for whispers, for dragging bone. Nothing came. The house was silent. Not the tense silence from before, just stillness. I slowly pushed myself upright. My camera lay beside me on the floor, screen shattered, battery dead, but intact. The antique desk stood untouched, no maps, no ink, no quill. The front door clicked softly, unlocked. Outside, I heard the distant hum of Manhattan traffic climbing the hill, a car horn, a bus engine, life. For several long seconds, I didn't move. Then I turned slowly toward the staircase, half expecting to see gray limbs peering from the attic. But the stairs were empty. The air felt lighter, cleaner. The house no longer pressed inward. It felt unburdened. Behind me, the front door opened gently. Morning breeze drifted inside. I stepped toward it cautiously. At the threshold, I paused, and I heard it. Not marching, not dragging, just a faint, fading whisper. Choice. Then, nothing. I stepped outside into daylight. The mansion stood behind me, dignified and unchanged. But something was different, something subtle. The windows reflected only sky now, not watching eyes. I took one last look at the Morris-Jumel Mansion, and for the first time since entering, it looked like a house, not a headquarters, not a prison, just history. But history, I realized, still remembers. I didn't look back as I walked down the hill. The morning air in Washington Heights felt unreal, too bright, too alive. Traffic moved normally. Joggers passed by without a second glance. A dog barked somewhere across the street. Manhattan was exactly as it should be. Behind me, the Morris-Jumel Mansion stood quiet against the blue sky. No cracked windows, no screaming beams, no visible scars from the night before. If anyone had passed by at that moment, they would have seen nothing unusual. But I knew. I flagged a rideshare and left without speaking to the caretaker. I didn't wait for 7 a.m., I didn't file a report, I didn't review the footage. I went home. For 2 days, I didn't touch my camera. I told myself it had been stress-induced hallucination, sleep deprivation, psychological suggestion fueled by years of researching haunted locations. But on the third night, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I plugged the camera into my laptop. The screen was cracked, but the internal storage had survived. There were 6 hours of footage. Most of it was normal. My setup, my introduction, quiet rooms. Then, at 9:32 p.m., the audio spiked. The knocks. Clear as day. 3, then 1. My voice asking for confirmation. The response. My breathing grew audible through the speakers as I watched myself turn toward the staircase. The footage showed something I didn't remember seeing clearly in person. On the stairs, there was a shape, faint, translucent, a woman in a high-waisted gown descending slowly. Her face wasn't distorted, it wasn't monstrous. It matched historical portraits of Eliza Jumel almost perfectly. The video glitched momentarily as the gray creature first appeared, the pixels scrambling violently. But it was there, tall, skeletal, real. The battle scenes that followed flickered across the camera lens as if projected onto invisible glass. And then, the moment I tore the map, the audio spiked to painful levels, the screen filled with static. When the image returned, I was alone in the parlor, standing still, staring at nothing. No creature, no soldiers, no cracks in the floor. Just me, breathing heavily. The timestamp jumped from 11:14 p.m. to 6:58 a.m., nearly 8 hours missing. My stomach tightened. I fast-forwarded to the final clip. At 6:59 a.m., the camera fell sideways to the floor. The front door opened, morning light entered, and I walked out, calmly, as if nothing had happened. I don't remember that walk. I don't remember unlocking the door. I don't remember stepping outside. But there I was, leaving. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the paused frame. Then I noticed something else. In the reflection of the glass on the front door as I stepped out, there was someone behind me. Not inside the house, not in the hallway, but standing directly at my back. Tall, still, watching. I rewound it 5 times. Every time the figure remained. It didn't move, it didn't blink, it just stood inches behind me as I crossed the threshold. When I zoomed in, the face wasn't skeletal anymore. It wasn't distorted. It looked almost human, almost like mine. My chest tightened. I shut the laptop. That night I dreamed of beams cracking, of soldiers marching, of ink bleeding across maps. But something was different in the dream. I wasn't beneath the mansion. I was inside it, seated at the desk. The house around me felt stable, strong, anchored. And when I looked down at my hands, they weren't trembling. They were steady, commanding. I woke up gasping at 3:17 a.m. The room was dark, silent, but my bedroom door was slightly open. I always close it before sleeping. I stared at the gap in the doorway. Nothing visible, just darkness beyond. Then, softly, from the hallway, a single knock, 3 times. My blood ran cold. I didn't answer. I didn't move. After a long pause, a whisper drifted through the crack. Not layered, not monstrous, calm, measured. Choice. The word lingered in the air long after the sound faded. It's been 3 weeks since that night. I haven't uploaded the footage. I haven't returned to Washington Heights. But sometimes, when I pass reflective surfaces, windows, mirrors, darkened screens, I see someone standing just slightly behind me. Not always clear, not always visible, but present, waiting. The mansion may no longer need a foundation, but command, I've learned, doesn't disappear. It relocates. And some nights, when the city falls quiet, I can almost feel wooden beams stretching overhead, holding for now.